Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another video on my channel Hairliciously. If you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe so that you guys are updated on hair loss and hair transplant content, as well as updates on current hair loss treatments in the pipeline. If you guys are losing hair, make sure to visit my website at hairliciously.com for hair loss solutions backed by science. In today's video, I wanted to talk about oral minoxidil. As you guys may be aware, I am currently taking a single pill containing 1.25 milligram of oral minoxidil and 0.5 milligram of dutasteride once a day through a telehealth company called HappyHead. And specifically, I wanted to discuss about the optimal oral minoxidil dosage for treating androgenetic alopecia. We know that oral minoxidil improves hair growth with dosages that typically range anywhere from 0.25 all the way up to 5 milligram. And we also know that based on the research that we have on oral minoxidil, the bigger the dosage, the better the hair growth is going to be. But then there's also a catch. Studies also do show that higher dosages of oral minoxidil oftentimes are going to come with higher risks of side effects, including excessive body hair growth, low blood pressure. Some people experience cardiac related issues, limb swelling. So here's a good illustration showing how increasing the dosage is positively correlated with increases to hair density, hair diameter, and adverse side effects. And knowing this, I wanted to see exactly where that optimal dosage lies when it comes to oral minoxidil, which would maximize the chances for regrowth while minimizing the risks of adverse side effects. So I did some research and I looked into several recent publications on oral minoxidil dosages that ranged from 0.25 to 5 milligrams once a day, as well as study durations ranging from at least 6 months to a year. So this first article that I found is titled Effectiveness and Safety of Low-Dose Oral Minoxidil in Male Androgenetic Alopecia. Basically, this study looked into the effects of patients who are taking either 2.5 or 5 milligram of oral minoxidil daily for a minimum of 6 months. And in the study, they didn't really separate the results from the 2.5 with the 5 milligram, but they did state that the response rate from the patients taking both dosages were at 90%, meaning that clinical improvement was observed in 9 out of 10 patients. The study also reported a nearly 30% rate of those who had experienced adverse side effects. And at first, this might sound awfully high, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because over 24% of the side effects were related to increased body hair growth, and only about 5% had lower limb edema, and 2.4% had experienced hair shedding. So, technically, only about 5% of the study group had actual adverse side effects. Now, let's take a look at another study titled Very Low Dose Oral Minoxidil in Male Androgenetic Alopecia, a study with quantitative trichoscopic documentation. In this study, patients were taking a very low dosage of oral minoxidil at 0.25 milligram daily for at least 24 weeks. And the study found that about 60% of the patients taking 0.25 milligram oral minoxidil had a positive response rate. So definitely, a lot lower compared to the previous higher dose of 2.5. Out of the 25 patients who were sampled in the study, nearly 90% of them claimed to have side effects, with 52% of that being due to increased beard growth, 20% increased body hair, 16% hair shedding, and 4% lower limb edema. So same thing here, the actual adverse side effect percentage was around 4%. And the last study that I wanted to reference is titled Efficacy and Safety of Oral Minoxidil 5 milligram once daily in the treatment of male patients with androgenetic alopecia, an open label and global photographic assessment. And, in this study, 30 men were treated with 5 milligram of oral minoxidil daily for the past 24 weeks. And in terms of hair loss, they ranged anywhere from a NORD 3 to a NORD 5. And the study found that based on photographic assessment, 100% of the patients had seen improvement. And on top of that, 43% of the patients showed excellent improvement. Given that all the patients had experienced hair growth, 93% claimed increased body hair growth, 10% had lower limb edema, and 10% had cardiac-related issues. So definitely better hair growth response rate, but also at the same time, there's also a higher side effect profile. So comparing all three studies, it's clear to see that the highest dosage at 5 milligram oral minoxidil had the best response at 100% of patients who had actually noticed hair regrowth, followed by 2.5 to 5 milligram range, and then the 0.25 milligram. And as I mentioned, because not all side effects from the 3 studies were necessarily bad, as the overwhelming majority of them constituted increased body hair growth or facial hair growth, we needed to actually look at the actual adverse side effects such as edemas, cardiac related issues. So the side effects for the 0.25 and the 2.5 milligram oral minoxidil were pretty negligible, around 4 to 5% for both of them. Whereas the 5 oral minoxidil had about a 20% side effect rate, mainly the edema, water retention, swelling, and cardiac related issues. So taking all of this into consideration, I think that the most ideal and optimal dosage for oral minoxidil is at the 2.5 milligram range. The study showed a 90% response rate, as well as only a 4 to 5% of patients who had actually experienced adverse side effects. Now, with that said, I think it's also important to know that minoxidil's efficacy can also depend on the severity of hair loss that you may have. One thing to note is that most clinical studies on androgen alopecia will only select certain patients who all have similar severities of hair loss. And this typically is going to fall anywhere between a NORD 3 to a NORD 5. And then this range would then represent the population of hair loss sufferers who may later opt for this treatment and have enough hair follicle miniaturization and hair loss to, really effectively evaluate cosmetic improvements to hair thinning. And because most studies on oral minoxidil is not standardized to just the NORD 3 to the NORD 5 subcategories, it's going to be actually difficult to make apple-to-apple comparisons across studies for response rates and side effects. So, you always kind of want to think about this and take it with a grain of salt. But one thing that I find useful from these studies is that typically, if you don't have severe hair loss, you can generally get away with a lower dose of treatment. And if you do have severe hair loss, you'll likely need to stick with a higher dose of treatment. And, this is not just going to apply to oral minoxidil. It also applies to finasteride, dutasteride, and any other hair loss treatments you may use in conjunction to oral minoxidil. Someone who is, just losing hair or having a mild case of thinning or miniaturization may want to start at a lower dose of 0.25 milligram as a starting point, whereas somebody with a more moderate form of hair loss might look into 1.25 to 2.5 milligrams. And if you have a severe type of hair loss, you'll likely need to stick with the higher dosage of 5 milligrams once a day. Now, in my case, I started off with 1.25 simply because my hair loss really isn't severe. It's more moderate. And given that I'm also on oral dutasteride, it's stabilized to the point where I don't really notice any crazy miniaturization. I do have my sheds here and there, but it's not to the point where, I'm like shedding a lot and just constantly losing hair. But I do plan on upping the dosage to 5 milligram only because I want to see if there's a possibility that a higher dosage of oral minoxidil is going to help with additional hair growth. I've been seeing some decent gains kind of like on the sides of my head from oral minoxidil and dutasteride. And, given that Happy Head does have fully customizable hair loss treatment options, I'm leaning towards on trying the 5 milligram once a day. So I'll definitely keep you guys posted on my progress. But I just really wanted to show you guys and share this information on oral minoxidil. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on 2.5 milligram kind of being like the optimal dosage in terms of response rate and adverse side effects. If you're also taking a higher dosage of oral minoxidil, I've seen people taking upwards to like 10 milligrams, 25 milligrams. I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But as always, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this video has been educational. Make sure to check out Happy Head if you guys are interested in starting hair loss treatment. And I will talk to you guys in my next video. Take care, guys.